Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today, we have a very special show for you guys. As you can probably see, we've got 3 guests, so you're spoiled today. We're joined by Nick Craig, who's president of Core Leadership Institute and author of Leading from Purpose, Maaten van Beek, HR director of Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg at ING, and Loren Shuster, chief people officer at Lego. Welcome to the show, guys. How are you all?
We're great.
Nice to be here.
Thanks for joining us. Before we jump in quickly, and very quickly, give everyone a quick overview of yourself personally, your experience, background, very short, just for everyone for context. I'll pick on you first, Nick.
Okay, so I spent the last 15 years working in authentic leadership and purpose. In the last 4 or 5 years, I've had the beautiful opportunity of working with my friend here at Lego, as well as Maaten at ING, as we bring purpose to the organizations. And so I'm just looking forward to this dialogue today.
Well, thanks, Chris, for the invitation. And it's good to see you again. I'm the Chief People Officer and the Head of Corporate Affairs for the Lego Group. I've been with Lego approaching 5 years now. And I started as the Chief Commercial Officer and transitioned into the HR and people space 2 years ago. Previous to that, I worked in technology for Nokia and for Google, and have been on a personal journey of my own in terms of personal development, team development. That led me to Nick, which I guess we'll talk about later, and the purpose work that we're going to talk about today.
No, so it's Maaten from the Netherlands, and I think I'm an HR guy. I'm not born as an HR guy, but I've been and worked in multiple industries, medtech, fast moving, and then that's where I know Nick from, coming from Unilever and Monica, where we worked on purpose in the past, and now more or less finishing the loop in ING, where we make it even bigger. Really great to be here.
Last but not least, the people that don't know me, I met Nick a few months ago, and I was like, what's this? I'll be honest, my initial reaction to the purpose work was, this is maybe a bit fluffy. I don't have time for this. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm too busy. And I went to Nick's Purpose to Impact workshop, and ever since then, I operate from that place now. It's my foundation of both personally and from a business perspective where I operate. And it was kind of one of the, a massive game changer for me and my co-founder and the team here. So I really wanted to have this episode. I couldn't think of any better people to have. So thank you guys so much. And just wanted to start with a question and just for all of you, why bring purpose to Lego, to ING? And what was the story and inspiration behind that? We can start with yourself, Loren.
Yeah, well, the short answer is that Lego is a purpose-driven organization. And I know a lot of companies say that, and there's a lot written about how important it is to have a meaningful purpose as a company. However, Lego, it has been at the core of who we are for over 87 years. Our purpose and our vision is to inspire and develop the builders of tomorrow, i.e. the children of today who will be the adults of tomorrow. Who wouldn't find that purposeful, creating playful learning experiences for children? So then what I was looking at doing was tying Lego's corporate purpose and our product purpose and value proposition with individual purpose, and looking for that space of intersection where if you could find your purpose overlapping with the purpose of the organization that you're operating in, then that creates the conditions for people to truly thrive and reach their potential.
Let me build a little bit on Loren's story, because I think for ING, it's quite similar, to be honest. I think as a company, we have a great purpose, empowering people to stay ahead in life and business. The financial institutions in the world are under huge change. The technology is changing, the context of banking is changing. And what we saw was that people were missing a beacon in that big change, in what Nick often calls a VUCA world. And I think we started with giving all our leaders the opportunity to work on their own purpose and then connect that with the company's purpose. What lacked in the first phase was that we only focus on the leaders. So we focus on the 2,000 leaders globally, and we started rolling out a couple of months ago by expanding that to each and every ING employee in the Benelux, which is 25,000 people, to ensure that in a time of big change, they have something to go back to. Who am I? What do I want to contribute to life? And then ideally that is with ING, but it doesn't have to be. So it's also a little bit bacon for their own developing on the long term.
And Nick, tell me your story with both these gentlemen here.
Yeah, well, this is sweet. There's a personal story because it's just my journey with each of these guys. That's been as powerful as anything else. And in some sense, when we looked at both of these systems, each of the organization was facing unprecedented levels of uncertainty. On the Lego side, Toys R Us, when it goes bankrupt and 15% of your business disappears overnight, it's like, how do you deal with that? And the whole business ecosystem is changing. The same thing's happening in the banking world. And so the question for both of these individuals as we were looking at this is, what are we going to give leaders to stand on? What do they stand on? For me, purpose is the ultimate antidote to uncertainty. It's the one thing that doesn't change. Strategies change, titles change, roles change. But in some ways, the beautiful thing for each individual is their purpose doesn't change. And having that as a solid foundation to stand from is in some sense what we're working on with both of these organizations.
I would love to hear your personal experiences of the journey that you've been on so far. I appreciate it's hard to encapsulate that in a short LinkedIn live stream. But if you could both share, or you could all share, and I'll include myself, I will share, what's your experience been as a benefit of this work that you've been doing and the impact it's had.
Yeah, sure. So maybe I'll start with my personal journey with purpose, and then I could talk about how it unfolded in the Lego context. So actually, Nick was my personal coach. So he was using the purpose work in our individual sessions, to distill a complicated process down to, something relatively simple, is that the purpose work helped me to articulate in a very simple way and metaphorical way much of the previous personal development work and leadership development work that I've done in the past. So in a way, it's the red thread that has connected, different pieces of work that I've done over the years, because it's ends up being relatively simple as you have a articulated purpose statement, which for me is to be the untamed fox who cunningly helps others to see the essential, which is based on the book The Little Prince, or Le Petit Prince. To be able to package so much meaning into a purpose statement and just have that accessible, I think has been just truly rewarding and powerful. And then in terms of my team, what I decided to do was I decided to start with the HR organizations. I have about 230 colleagues in the HR organization, which we call People Operations and Development. And we were coming out of, as Nick was saying, some turbulent years, and the HR organization in particular was facing some challenges, so a lot of organizational change, and then growth slowed down, a lot of uncertainty. So I felt that the best thing to do in terms of investing in their development was to invest in them as individuals. And then as they were able to stand on solid ground in terms of understanding what their direction and what their purpose is, then to link that with the broader P.O.D. or HR journey, and then the broader Lego journey, as I mentioned before. And now it's expanding beyond the HR community to other parts of the Lego organization.
Before I forget this question, personally though, Loren, how's it influenced your decision making as a leader and you as a person more broadly?
Well, I think it's really about the accessibility, as I mentioned before. So having this purpose statement, which then has a lot of meaning behind it and a lot of different experiences behind it, it allows me easy access to my unique strengths or my unique gifts, especially in times of tension, pressure, uncertainty. There's a lot of stuff going on all the time, and you could end up operating quite compulsively and not necessarily staying connected and grounded to what's truly important and what you can truly uniquely bring to a particular situation. So just having that awareness, that level of consciousness, and just thinking about, the fox in my case, that will bring me back to, kind of my core and allow me to kind of navigate. And I think, be less reactive and more considered and responsive in how I engage with different situations and people as it arises.
I think his team also sees that part of him. We just did a gathering. We worked together with his team about a year and a half ago, and then we brought them all back together about a month ago to reassess how well we have progressed as a group and where have we come. And it was pretty powerful. I don't know about you, Loren, just to see the beauty of the impact of the journey of what you as a group have been on and the level of connection that everybody has around helping each other operate more fully from their purposes. Maybe you want to say just a little bit about what that experience is like.
Yeah, and I think one great thing about doing this, Chris, you did it in an open enrollment. We did it as a intact team, and we've been rolling it out in other intact teams and across the Lego group. And what's so powerful there is that through the process, you gain deep, very, very deep insight into the crucible stories, the narratives of your colleagues. You start to understand at a deeper level why they strive to achieve the things that they strive for and how they go about doing it. And then having this mix of ingredients of different purposes, and that being fully knowledgeable to everyone, I think just gives us easier access to each other and allows us as a group to have a level of coherence and connection that is possible, of course, without the work. I think not as easily accessible and not as deep and meaningful.
How did you feel doing the Crucible stories with your teams? Because when I did the course, I did it with people that I'd never met before. In many ways, it was actually easier for me to go through my Crucible story with people that I'd never met. For some reason, even though I've just met these people, an hour ago, I'm now going through the 3 most challenging, trying times of my entire life and explaining it to people, reliving memories and emotions that I haven't felt that are deep down for years, right? I never thought I would want to revisit, and I'll be honest, in some of those cases. And I'm doing that with a complete stranger that I've never met before. And I was thinking at some point, I don't know if I could do this with my team and let them in this much, this deep into Chris. And I'm just wondering what your experience was with doing it with people that you work with and see every single day. Because I'm sure that's a concern of some people.
I think Lego is a special company. So I think we were starting at a very kind of high base already in terms of trust and caring and authenticity. And, these are all dimensions of our culture, and they're very strong in the organization. Having said that, there's always individuals, certain individuals are more ready to be vulnerable and to be open with each other. So we needed to ensure that we created the safe space and the context. And I think I was able to play a role modeling role as the leader, and Nick and I discussed what is the best approach to engage the team. And, very often I would share first and create the context for others, which I think is super helpful, not just in an exercise like purpose to impact, but for leaders to demonstrate their vulnerability on an ongoing basis, of course, humanizes them. And it's through humanization that relationships and contacts are formed. And you could only build followership if you feel a meaningful connection with a leader. So I think those were some of the principles and the ingredients that were necessary. And what we found is very quickly after the first exercise, people realized that their colleagues and their peers were there to really listen benevolently and without judgment and in a supportive way. And that just then fueled the rest of the process.
One thing I would say, I realized that, and we've had these follow-up conversations with Nick and the people that are part of that day, I built more meaningful relationships and connections with some of those people in 2 days than I have with some people that I've known my entire life. I know that sounds, people may not believe that when I say that, but genuinely going through that 2-day process and getting to know those people, just even going through those crucible. Nick, do you want to explain quickly to everyone what the crucible, what that means? We're talking about it.
Exactly.
Everyone knows what it means.
No, and most people probably don't. So, the most of us have been deeply challenged in our life. Usually when you do an interview with people, you don't tell those stories. We tell the stories of our sort of when we've been wonderful and whatever the case may be. But what we found is that when we create a safe space and people can really tell some of their most challenging life stories, and they're very humbling stories about sometimes where we were at our least capable. When we share them with each other, what we realize is that we all have suffered some of the same challenges, and it releases a level of vulnerability and authenticity and trust that most of us haven't experienced. And we realize that we all feel alone. But when we share these stories, that we feel all of a sudden instantly not alone. And we realize that most everybody else, even though they look so much more perfect than we are, they have all been so humbled by the journey. And I think that's really what we try to do in this experience, is that titles and status and where you went to school and any of those things no longer matter, because no matter what those things are, they never protect us from these experiences. On the other side of the coin, when we look at the resilience that each of us has today, and we think of those stories and we listen to other people's stories, we realize that the current challenges that we're facing are nowhere near as overwhelming as we thought they were 2 seconds ago. So it's about bringing those pieces together. I think it's a very powerful thing to do it with an intact team, to share it. It's also powerful to do it with a bunch of strangers. It always works. Whichever way we do it, people always swear they could never imagine doing it the other way.
Oh, really?
So there you go.
What advice would you give to companies that are considering going on a journey like this?
The first thing is to just clarify what you're trying to achieve. You know, there's a lot of different programs, leadership training. I mean, it's endless. So I think for any organization that is looking to get beyond some of the jargon around authentic leadership or being a purpose-driven organization, and starting to really unpack what that means in a deeper manner, and is looking to really unlock the potential of the teams. I mean, this is a strength-based, orientated training or process. You know, individuals get to explore what makes them so unique. So I think for organizations that are genuinely interested in, and I think it should be all, my personal view, but unlocking that potential and creating the space to empower people. Again, empowerment is another big word that's used all the time. What does it really mean? I think it means creating space, and then creating the context for individuals to kind of be their bigger selves. And, you know, purpose is about defining, you know, who are you when you are being your bigger self, that you could bring truly your gifts to the table. And so I think companies that are genuinely interested in this should consider it.
What are the challenges do you think, and this for you, Nick, as well, that companies have when trying to roll this out? Because I'm sure it's not easy. There must be challenges, whether it's gaining buy-in or actually getting the leaders both to demonstrate it themselves, like yourself, Loren. Could you give any advice around that, or has it all been pretty good for you so far?
No, I would say, you know, the challenge with this type of work, again, you need to have an authentic interest in it, and at some level, you're doing some deeper psychological work within a corporate context. And I think there's a precondition of a certain level of trust, a certain level of respect, a certain level of caring that has to exist within the organization. That it's not some cynical approach to check a box that we're going to be doing this purpose work, but that the conditions are right, which I consider to be, you know, trust, caring, and respect for, you know, all human beings in the organization.
Yeah, I would say that, you know, from my experience over the last 10, 15 years, the truth is that the organizations and the leaders that we work with, I think they're very consistent with Loren, who you are. And in some sense, their challenge is about how do they make sure that they help wake up and keep awake everyone else. And in some ways, it's seeing in the organization that they can't do it all by themselves. Okay, and how do you amplify that which you are trying to bring fully to everybody? And how do you make it that when people come into the organization, they get it? And they go, oh, okay, this is why I'm here. And so how do you make this be the feeling that people have in the organization. What does that look like? In some sense, that's what we're co-creating with each of these organizations, an experience that exemplifies everything that can't be communicated in a set of words, because you experience it in its visceral. And I think that's part of what we've been doing. Lego is a wonderful organization. People are in that system, and there is a reality of what it feels to be working for Lego. But at the same time, it's a tough business to be in. And how do you remind people of what the gift is? And in some sense, we all need to be remembering why we are in the place we are. None of us escape that need for reconnection. And in some sense, that's what we're talking about here. And so, Chris, it'd be great if you were to share with everyone what your purpose is.
So my purpose statement is to be the unbreakable artist that dances you to life. So I have to explain that, right? Because a lot of the purpose statements, everyone listening, the words are chosen very carefully to be meaningful to me, right? So the unbreakable artist, when I was younger, I suffered a lot of trauma through sort of violence in the home and some very difficult times of sort of drugs and alcohol in the family. And art, drawing, painting, building things was my escape. So whenever that was happening in the household, I would just disappear into even if it's grabbing some cereal boxes and building something out of it, or grabbing a pen and just finding a piece of paper that I could draw. It was my escape. And I realized through the crucible journey that where I'm most successful in businesses is creating things. In all the previous roles I've ever been, I've always loved product development, building up this podcast, right? The content. And it was those skills that I didn't realize that, whereas the team around me in the workshop actually recognized that. So the unbreakable artist is part of one thing I've always been in many companies, and I hate to be a yes man. So if I genuinely believe in something, I will stick by it, and that's both inside and outside the workplace. If I've got an opinion, I'll make sure my voice is heard, and that's where the unbreakable artist comes. So I love challenging. An example: my friends and family said, "Who are you to do a podcast? Who's going to listen to you?" Right? My unbreakable artist in me said, "Well, guess what? In a few years' time, this is going to be the #1 HR podcast in the world, and here we are." Right, that's an example. Or Chris, you've got 7 employees. Why is LinkedIn going to give you LinkedIn live streaming access when you're not an influencer? Here we are. I'm not bragging. It's because I got knocked down 1,000,000 times before I got to where I am now through everything. But that's where my unbreakable eyes come from. And then the dance that used to life part is, for me, there's nothing more satisfying to me than having someone join our business and seeing them flourish. So, and I use the dancing you to life is because I used to be a dancer. So that word connects with me. And I love seeing someone come into our business, from school, university, and seeing them grow and develop and live out their dreams and progress in our company. And that's the dancing you to life part. And that's what I love. So my time here is spent between building products, kind of disrupting what we do every day and rethinking kind of what we do, and actually building and hiring, attracting, developing talent. That's where I live every day in our company. So I hope that made sense. It makes sense to me. That's what matters.
So could you show us your the drawing that you made?
So basically, during the workshop at the end, you write your execution plan, right? There's one thing going through the purpose, the impact course, but you want to make sure you can execute that. Everyone was writing it out on a bit of paper and creating it. For me, it didn't relate to me. So I ended up just grabbing the whiteboard and just started drawing. I actually had no plan of where it was going, and this is what happened. I'll show you it, but I'm not going to explain it because it's going to be here for a while. But this is what I drew.
Wow.
And it's some mountains. There's like a river here. And this is kind of the journey that we've been on as a business. And then I have my 1 year, 2 year, 2 to 3 year, and 3 to 5 year strategy written on here. And I have a few things that represent where we're going on there. So yeah, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but that's basically
very cool.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, and I'm actually I've nearly finished the painting. I'm halfway through bringing that into
well, I could show you my artifact that I have here. It's not quite a drawing, but there's the pop from the Little Prince. That was a gift from one of my colleagues. So I have it on my desk.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
So it's important when I leave the office.
Very cool.
Yeah, and you see that it brings it back, right? For me, when I walk in the office and I leave the office every day, that's the first thing I see.
Yeah.
is that it's actually on the door. So
Exactly.
yeah. So, but what was? We haven't got to your purpose, Nick.
Yeah. So my purpose is to wake you up, to truly wake you up, and if I have you finally really be home. And that story for me comes out of when I was a teenager, and I remember I was living in a basement apartment overlooking a swamp. Literally, my family had just moved there, and my parents were arguing. And I was going to the worst school system in the United States, and I was a pretty miserable kid. Being a teenager is pretty miserable as it is, but this really made it doubly miserable. And I remember going to this bookstore and sitting there, and I started opening these books, and there were books about Churchill or Gandhi or Lincoln or a whole series of different people. And what I realized is that their journey in life had been so incredibly challenging, much more so than anything I had experienced. But they had excelled and stepped into these magnificent roles. And so I realized that I had a choice in life. I had a choice to either be the victim or either thrive or survive, literally. And I chose to thrive. And I chose that my goal in life, my purpose in life was to help others do the same. And so in some ways, it's about how do we bring each of us home? And there's a place that inside of us that we can go to that no one else can give us. And if we are dependent upon the external world, it will always do unpredictable things. And so how do we find home? And Chris, your example of your journey in life and the challenges you grew up in and finding art as the foundation, the safe place, and then using that as the metaphor for defining your plan for how you wanted to move forward made so much sense to me as an expression. And I think Maaten van Beek, the ING security protocols forced him off, so he's
Maaten
not able
was
to
on
join
here,
us.
by the way. His I suppose it's a compliment to the team how good their IT security is, but it has blocked him from joining us, unfortunately.
What was interesting is that we were just getting an award from EMFD on the program we did, and so we're getting prepared for it. And I had to go look at all these different plans people have created. So at ING, we ran through the top 5,000. And in the process of doing that, we basically did it similar to how we're doing it at Lego. There's a couple of us from my company that run the program, but we leverage internal Lego resources or ING resources to run the programs. And they are the ones that take people on the journey. They took the journey, and then they help people take the journey. And in some ways, it's the best way to live your purpose and deepen it is to help others go on the journey as well. And so the Chief Learning Officer, Zahid, that works for Loren, he just did that program and had just a fabulous time helping others go on the journey. And so in some sense, this whole model is how do we deepen everybody's ability to access that place and help others go on it. I was looking at a lot of the plans. They are all these beautiful expressions of each individual. I have one that is about being the multiplayer game, and he has a Mario computer game metaphor for his. Another is the alchemist, who has this sort of a mind map model that he used. And so each of these individuals start to personalize a plan. In some ways, when the plan becomes that personalized, you actually look at it. Because most of us spend our lives creating plans for other people for which once we've created it for them, we hope we never have to look at it again. And so in some sense, this is the only plan that's about you and it's for you. And in some sense, when organizations say to me, what is the ROI for doing this? I say, go look at such and such's plan. And they go look at the plan. They're going, wow, this is so much bigger than what the forecast is. This is exactly. Because the forecast is not your purpose. Yeah. Your purpose has plans much bigger than any forecast will ever have for you, right? So that's what we're trying to do with this. And in the ING case, we're now rolling it out to the next 25,000 employees. And we have trained up 40 internal resources to teach a 2-day version using some video assets from us and some other things. And they're going to be rolling through about 8,000 people every 6 to 8 months. And that's basically what we've been doing. And Maaten is the reason that that's happening, okay? Because as they brought in the whole agile model and they got rid of everybody's title. Now in banking, everybody has a VP title, right?
They love a VP title in the banking, don't
they? Think about if you got rid of all of those titles, what is it that people say? So when you work, what do you say you do, right? Well, now what people have is they say, well, I work at ING, but let me tell you what my purpose is. So it's a whole different way of thinking about for organizations. Since the hierarchies are all going away, so what is it you're going to move into in 5 years if it's not a higher level title anymore? So in some ways, the opportunity is to shift it from being about titles and having it be about how do you more deeply express your purpose.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, some of what we've been working on.
Loren, on that point, how do you then enable your people to be purposeful in their role once they've gone through this? Because I'm sure, like me, if they're anything like me, it was a massive transformation for me. It was a big shift, and I'm sure you get some people that have come through it and just completely reassessed where they are, what they're doing, where they operate from, their purpose. How do you then support them?
But we've had, really only a few cases where people have gone through the process and really started to question, to the extent that you're discussing, am I on a completely wrong path? But we have had, one or two of those cases, and then that's opened a very enriching dialogue about how we could support maybe someone who has discovered that their natural creativity has been underutilized because they're in an overly administrative or analytical role. And we've discussed, what kind of transitions they can make both within their role and then to potentially other roles in the organization. So if you're going to undertake, and this is maybe back to your other question about what advice I would give to other companies, if you're going to commit wholeheartedly to this process and wholeheartedly to people finding out genuinely, what their purpose is and what they uniquely bring, then you need to be ready to have the discussions around how to leverage that within the context, even if it's not in their current capacity or their current role as it's defined today. Then if I talk about it through the lens of leading my HR leadership team, then, the plans that Nick was describing, all of my team members, including me, have these purpose to impact plans. And so we're discussing them on an ongoing basis and referencing them on an ongoing basis to ensure that people are spending as much time as possible, so-called in their sweet spot, where they can fully live their purpose.
And I remember ING, I don't want to quote the exact person, but I did hear that there were some people that left, that they realized that working at ING perhaps wasn't directly aligned with their purpose. And that's great. It wasn't a negative either, because it actually, if anything, you're helping that person discover what they truly love and believe in. And I thought that was pretty cool. And they were prepared for that, and they encouraged it in some cases as well. And I was like, wow, what a completely different way of looking at it that I never would have said before. I know that's the extreme, by the way, but there are some people that are going to be like that too.
Well, yeah, but this is right. The purpose doesn't have you realize you need to quit your job and go move to India and feed the poor.
No, I don't mean that's
it like that. That's a tactic, right? And so in some ways, the beautiful thing about purpose is what it does is it helps you understand why you're doing what you're doing. And in some ways, over time, you still have to then resolve what is the stage in which you want to bring your purpose fully alive. And in some ways, I think the opportunity is that when you have someone like as a leader like Loren is that you work for, it becomes an ongoing process of revealing what's the next door to move through. And so you become successful within a particular role and you nail it. In the crew at LinkedIn, their whole orientation is every job you take is a tour of duty. And you think of it as a 2 or 3 year tour of duty, and then you do a re-up and you decide what is the next tour that you're going to be doing. And it's a different way of looking at what's the process. The whole idea of staying in an organization and sort of moving all the way up over 20 or 30 years, it's hard to imagine any organization that still was able to pull that one off.
No.
So I think for each of us, the point of this is to be able to help us always clarifying and then being able to commit 100%. The challenge for most of us in most organizations is everybody being committed 80% does not get you a winning organization, right? How do you get the extra 20% is the difference between the companies that are successful and the ones that are not. And so in some sense, what a lot of this work is about is how do you help people own that last 20%? And what does that look like? And then having a dialogue of why do you re-up the journey as you go along?
I love that, and that's something that stood out from our recent interview, Loren. Your journey from your background to where you are now as Chief People Officer is incredible to hear that story of where you found this spot where you are. You realize that this is what you love doing. Yes, you was doing it in a different role, in a different function, but it was transferable perfectly into human resources.
Exactly.
We're seeing more and more leaders as well make that jump.
No, and I think the purpose work helped to, like I said at the beginning, it's kind of the red thread between different development activities and roles that I've had and helped me see, in a very distilled, simple way, how my choices all connect when I'm, being my bigger self, so to speak.
Well, I want to thank you both for joining us. Well, first of all, Nick, for inviting me to your workshop and bringing me on that journey. I really appreciate that. I'm so happy I took the time out now. It was definitely, and Loren, it's been great to get to know you over the last few weeks. You're probably sick of me now. It's twice you've had to see me.
Not yet.
This is really good.
As well, and it's been great to hear your personal journey. And I also realized I learned so much more from everyone else during the journey. That group helped me find everything I just discussed. I didn't reach that conclusion on my own, and going through it with those people that I'd never met before, I feel like I'm close. We have calls all the time now. We speak offline outside of it, and there were people on that table. There was billionaires on that table, right? Nick, and I was really intimidated when I first got there. I was like, who am I to be here with these incredible people? Because but you don't see behind all of that, the success, the job title, the business, when you really get to know the individual beyond that, through that crucible journey and through the whole 2 days. It was just amazing to go through
it's
that.
very powerful to be seen and to see other people for who they really are.
Yeah,
very well said.
Well, thanks a lot, guys. I know you've got around as well, Loren. And Nick, it's a pleasure as always. Thanks everyone on LinkedIn. By the way, if you guys want to check it out after Loren and Nick, loads of people in the LinkedIn comments have been sharing their purpose.
Oh, fantastic.
I haven't had a chance to read them all out, so I'm sorry, guys. There was a lot of purpose statements being written.
But they could also post their favorite Lego sets. That would also be okay.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
That's a great idea.
2 challenges before you go. 1, everyone who's listening, post your purpose statement in there. 2, what's your favorite Lego set? And then 3, what's the best way to reach you guys? So if our leaders want to reach out to you, Nick, Loren, what's the best way?
They could find me on LinkedIn.
Cool, that's easy.
Yep. They can find me on LinkedIn, or they can go to the website. So www.coreleader.com. Be happy to connect with them. So yes.
Amazing. And for everyone listening, always, if you head over to hrleaders.com, you'll find the show notes on this episode. Tomorrow will be in there. Links to everything will be discussed will also be in there tomorrow. If you're not already subscribed to the podcast, please do. Apart from that, go home to your families. Get off LinkedIn. Spend some time with the family. If you're in the US, get back to work. And we look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. See you later.
Thank you.
Chris, Nick, thanks.
Bye.
Great to be with you.